All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Jenny Clark with Solvability, and today's Freedom Friday, I have Ben McMartin, who is absolutely the brainy guy on everything innovation. And he's got so much brains up here that he doesn't have much hair left because he's been working on this so long. But I reached out to Ben because he changed jobs. He's now with Public Spend Forum, and he talked to me about something they have called GovShop. And I said, Ben, you are changing the way the government acquisition process works. So you've got to come on and tell us about it. So Ben, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just talk away about what you're doing to change the market.
All right. Sounds good. So I'm Ben McMartin. Up until last December, I worked for the Department of the Army for 11 years, where I was a contracting officer and then a program manager. And I've spent a large portion of that time working in S&T or R&D, whether it was in contracting or program management. And so my background is really heavy in S&T. I've worked for some program management offices. I've bought services and spares at some points in my career. I even did something called congressional affairs for a while, but the majority of my career was spent in R&D, which I love. So R&D is the area for me. So whether it's working with universities or working with tech startups or working with FFRDCs, I love contracting and I love acquisition surrounding research and development. And so my last assignment after I left the Army Contracting Command was to be the acquisition manager for the lab in Michigan, where I'm at currently, which at the time was called TARDEC, and now has a new very long acronym. And as the acquisition manager, my mission was to find the latest technologies for ground systems, mobility, autonomy, and energy storage. And so as part of that, I brought my contracting background over and was on a number of teams to develop other transaction authority capabilities for Army, and then ended up creating something I called the Acquisition Innovation Roadshow, which was literally an excuse for people to pay me to fly around the country and tell them what I had learned. And that worked out for 3 years. And I was able to do that for 3 years. And despite being caught several times by my management and by DOD, they let me do it. They gave me a stern finger whacking, but they let me do it. They did not fund me for it. I had to get people to fund me to go wherever I went. But it was a wild ride. Met a lot of other commands, helped a lot of other commands set up capabilities to get after S&T and new companies and increase their small business participation. And so that was really my last 3 years and something that I really loved. I wouldn't say I was all that successful at it. And part of that was because of the system and the process that I worked within. So new tools and authorities were great, and they really helped us engage a lot of companies we hadn't engaged before. But in recent studies, I believe, have shown pretty conclusively that the outreach ability of even some of these new innovation groups, which I'll show a little slide here in a second, is not keeping pace with the consolidation of larger defense companies. And so the result of that is that the industrial base is shrinking despite all the efforts to bring in new companies. The actual whole industrial base is actually shrinking. Were you going to try to jump in there, Jenny?
Yeah, I did. Ben, what's amazing to me is you say, well, I really didn't do anything, but you elevated the conversation so that people know what an OTA means and they want to get in, and you challenged other organizations to stand up, whether it's AFWorks or Naval X or whatever it is, and they created consortia, but it's still too darn complicated, right?
It's still too complicated. So
what is the solution?
Well, let me show you how complicated this is. All right, this is one of my favorite slides that I used to show on the roadshow here. So if you're seeing my screen, what you're seeing is standard approach on the left and an innovation approach on the right. And the standard approach is very, very simple, old school acquisition, at least between 84 and 2010, 2015, maybe. This is pretty standard acquisition process. There's a couple reform efforts in there that changed a couple things, but for the most part, someone developed a requirement. They did some market research, and that market research looked like, who can give me this thing that I already decided I needed, right? That was the scope of that market research. And then they've synopsized for 15 days, put out a giant 500-page request for proposal. And then you go into a black box and you do this thing called source selection, which, by the way, is how you get promoted in contracting. You have to be awesome at source selection. And I was, and that helped me in my contracting career. And then after about 2 years of not hearing from the government, someone gets an award. And that's a very standard, combat system or subsystem procurement. And that works in an environment that maybe existed in the late 50s or 60s even, where the government has all of the top scientists, top engineers, and all the money to invest in research. They got the labs, they got the people, they got the money. And as long as you got the labs and the people and the money, you probably can write the requirements and ask industry just to help you out in making it. But between 80 and 90, and especially in the 2000s, industry has blown past the government. And so the idea that the government's going to decide what the requirement is and then go out and just tell people what to make, it's fictitious at this point. I mean, when I started the roadshow in late 2015, my talking point was industry is out investing the government 3.5 to 1. It's already 4 to 1. It's already 4 to 1. All right. It's 5 years later. The stat has changed. My talking point would have changed in 5 years from 3.5 to 1, 4 to 1. Those are massive dollars.
Well, Ben, what about the Chinese? Are they spending 10 to 1 against us?
The Chinese have invested. If you look at AI, I think AI is the one killer, right? They have a national AI strategy and program, and they had it way before ours, by the way. And yes, they've $100 billion. Whether they're going to put that in or not, I don't know. But 3 years ago, DARPA made their big announcement that they had $2 billion total across their program for AI. So think about those numbers. And so as part of my making sure I was finding the latest and greatest of technology in the commercial world, which was imperative, right? Because that's where the technology breakthroughs are happening, not with government development. You see all this mess of stuff on the right, right? And so all this mess of stuff on the right is just the stuff that was kind of created during my time, 2015, 2016, 2017, to try and get after this. So I would call these, tech scouting groups. They serve a lot of different functions, whether it's OTA consortia or partner intermediary or some kind of tech scouting organization, or some kind of different authority that can be used. But at its genesis, these are just tech scouting organizations. They allegedly are going to find the latest and greatest people to integrate with the government so we can find the best technologies. And so I use a lot of these groups. I stood up several of these groups. And after a few years of using these groups, what I and almost everyone else has discovered is all my awards seem to be going to just about the same group of people. There's a couple success stories here or there, but for the most part, I'm just not seeing the breadth of people. Yeah, I'm getting a few awards here and there, but maybe I've been introduced to 200 new companies in the last 2 years. That's not all that much more than I would have experienced through traditional methods, meaning sources sought, request for information, market survey, right? Doing some market research through traditional systems, small business dynamic search or Google. It's not as I probably would have found 200 new companies in contracting over a 4-year period. And so that's where I was. That's where I was around 2019, right around the end of 2019, just saying, okay, we've done a lot of stuff. What's the impact of the stuff that we've done? And I think there was some impact. We moved the ball a little bit, like you said. We helped a lot of groups get a different idea of what the end goal was, as opposed to how fast can I award something, to can I award something that can actually transition. And so I think that was a big shift between 15 and 20, which was, can we at least get people to recognize that it's not about speed to buy the government requirement, because the government requirement might not be right. It's about identifying the problem, the solutions within industry. Can we bring them into the defense supply chain, and can we transition them to the field? And so I think we did okay with that message. We'll see if a new Congress decides they want to double down on sustainment and this whole modernization thing is dead. But for now, people are still saying nice things and they're talking points about it. So that's that mess on the right, which led me to leave and come to Public Spend Forum.
Well, I'm so glad you're talking about this, because as I'm going through this, I can remember who brought this topic up in Tampa, years ago, was Hondo Gertz, and started SoftWorks. And it's like, we can do all these things, but we can't do them fast enough. And I've been down to SoftWorks. It's a great place, and they've built out a lot of activity there, but it still feels like a bunch of guys showing up for pizza and beer, trying to get the attention, because they're not accessing funding to move these things forward. But you're changing the game. What is the deal with GovShop, and what are we doing?
All right, well, let's talk GovShop. By the way, groups like SoftWorks, obviously represented here as a partner intermediary, and groups like National Security Innovation Network, which is a DoD organization under DIU. They got off the rough starts, in my opinion. By the way, the roadshow started because of Hondo Gertz. He sent an email up to me and another guy at Tardec. We had no idea who he was. We worked for the Army. And he said, hey, I want you to come down here and show SOCOM how to do OTAs. That was early 2016, or maybe late 2016. And that was the official beginning of the roadshow. That's when we figured out, hey, people will pay us to go and do this. So Hondo Gertz, the first customer of the Acquisition Innovation Roadshow. All right. Let me get out of this.
Let me make sure that I give you back your sharing.
All right.
Let's see. I might have accidentally turned it off. There it goes.
I got it back.
All right.
All right. So in 2019, I was convinced by the founder of Public Spend Forum, Mr. Raj Sharma, that I should leave my career that I loved and come and join a startup. And so for people that know me, they know that's right up my alley, because, new and shiny often distracts me and attracts me. So I did some soul searching. I talked to a lot of the SESs that I fell under, and said, I'm gonna go and try this startup thing, because I think it's going to provide value back to DoD in a way that I'm just not getting to. I think we're getting some movement, we're changing some minds, but at the end of the day, someone's got to go make this, and it is not going to be DoD. DoD's software standard operating procedure is build it all in one big system, take 10 years to build it, and then figure out that it doesn't do what you want and then start over. And so we needed something nimble. We needed something that could be developed and commercialized so that it didn't rely on DoD. And I had known Raj off and on through NCMA, but really I was in town for a Defense Entrepreneurs Forum in DC to speak on something. And he was there, and he said, hey, can you come back to the office? I want to talk to you about something. And that's where he showed me GovShop. And as soon as I saw a GovShop, I was sold, because this was the piece that was missing in the equation. I was spending upwards of $10 million a year in broker fees, is what I'll call it, or fees to various organizations to go find me who the latest and greatest companies were. And whether that was to OTA consortia or consultants or to partner intermediaries, these groups, I was paying to do this function, which was go out, find me who the greatest technologies are in given areas, brief me on what the changes are in certain markets. And I really didn't get anything more than them doing the RFI in place of me, right? And so when I saw GovShop, I said, wait a minute, there's a technology here that can replace this function, or at least supplement this function. And what I loved about that is the technology could do a lot more than I could do. And that's really what sold me on GovShop. I thought about it for about a month and then made sure my wife was okay with it. And then I made the jump and went to work for Public Spend Forum. And as part of Public Spend Forum, the product is called GovShop. Anybody here can go to GovShop right now, sign up. It's free. You can go to GovShop, sign up for a vendor account, build a profile. GovShop works a lot like LinkedIn in that it's a profile for your specific company, but it's organized. The profile is organized in a manner that a contracting officer or former contracting officer or small business specialist or cost and price analyst or logie or program manager, whoever's doing the market research for the government, it's created in that format that they're going to want to see certain data elements. And so GovShop is specifically developed for public procurement. It's not just a database about companies. It's a database of companies with the concentration of organizing them to be efficient for public procurement. And that includes federal, state and local, and even international public procurement. And so,
Hey, Ben,
yep.
I was talking to Sana, and she said when people go to set up a profile in here, that actually the people at GovShop will tell them what keywords to put in, because that's part of the matching process. So this is not like on BetaSam or whatever, and you fill it all out and you don't really know if you're doing better. You guys are going to make it so the profiles of the businesses really match to what's being looked for, right?
Yeah, and that's because we serve two customers. So, on the supplier side, we have suppliers create a free account, you build a profile out. That's great. What does it do? What do you do with that, right? On the government side, we have government customers. Same thing. They build a free government profile. And what they're doing is performing market research through the tool to identify through keyword search, through code search, through contract search, multiple ways to search. They're identifying what the companies are that are out there that can support whatever their problem set are or requirement. And one key is when I started at Public Spend Forum, this is how you want to talk about a true startup. This number of suppliers we had said 784,000 when I started in December. We're at 1.9 million companies right now within GovShop. This number of contract vehicles, I think it was 1,900 at the time, we're at 2,600. So what that does is for the government side of the equation, they're able to go in here, search by keyword, use multiple filters, and find out, okay, I think that this is a sole source requirement. Oh, wait, I found 50 companies. Let me down select by hub zone. Now I can meet my goals, right? So from a small business office perspective, it's a really easy tool. By the way, you can do your own reporting in the tool. So you do your search, you can print out your report. It will map out what your search criteria is. You're ready to support your documentation, right? If you're DOD, I would staple this to my DD 2579 and let people know this is all the research I did and how I came to my conclusion. But from the government side, this is a great way to find a lot more companies that we've never seen. A lot of these companies aren't registered in SAM. A lot of these companies you don't have a DUNS number or cage code. You can sort by those filters, but if you're looking for non-traditionals, they're not going to have that stuff, right? You're looking for companies that don't have that stuff with a mix, so you can be able to identify that. And so, what we're doing at Public Spend Forum is using the algorithms in the background to match. So agencies are able to put their opportunities, requirements, documents within the system. We read those systems and we're able to match those to profiles. So for a company, we can tell you, hey, there was 1,100 new opportunities posted last week, okay, between beta.sam.gov, grants.gov, challenge.gov, citizenscience.gov, all the states and local procurement offices. We estimated about last week about 1,100 new ones. Do you want to look to 1,100 postings and hope? No, you want the computer to knock it down to, let's say 20. I think 20 is probably a reasonable start. And then maybe you want to go down to 10. Because at the end of the day, for a small business, you don't have a capture team. You cannot read 1,100 things. You can't just rely on keyword search. So what GovShop ultimately does is it narrows that pool so that a company can really target what they're going after. And then for our government customers, they also have free accounts on the government side for searching, for doing their market research, for producing reports, for identifying contracts that they can use instead of soliciting for a new contract. But we also do development efforts. So we're on a contract with the Army, we're on a contract with the Air Force right now. And specifically, they're having us develop additional capability, which will then be passed on to all government customers and ultimately make the searching better so that more companies are found. And so,
wait a minute. So you actually are going to the Army and saying, what do you guys need to improve your job? And we're just going to pull it?
absolutely. Absolutely. Why don't we just have it print the report in the exact same format that you guys do it currently? And let's not waste anybody's time. And, obviously the struggle for public spend form and GovShop is the power of the tool is that it's a commercial tool. And with DoD, everybody wants to put stuff behind the firewall and have their own buckets of data. And, that's a struggle. So we have to work with that. But the reality is this is all public supplier data. It's just about accessing it in a format that's usable for the government.
Wow. So you guys were talking about even having special setups for companies that say, I want to go after AR and VR, or how are you initiating some of those little market activities? It's almost like this is like online dating between the government and a facilitator. You're the matchmaker, right?
I'm happy you said that because the algorithms that drive the system are like dating app. I won't say like, they are dating app algorithms that drive the system. And obviously that's a key. Understanding what the company's capabilities and specialties are is so much more important than what PSC code or NAICS code that they put on their profile. Those, in reality, everyone puts a whole laundry list of NAICS code. Everyone puts a whole laundry list of PSC codes. Do they really work in those areas? Do they even know what those PSC codes contain? Rarely. And from a search perspective, by searching by PSC code is horrendous. So the reality here is the machine is going to look at the requirements documents, scope, PWS, whatever documents that you're creating. It's going to look at the language. It digests the language through natural language processing and builds a curriculum that goes around that requirement. And then it matches that curriculum against the specialties and expertise contained in the profile. Yes, codes are part of it. Yes, socioeconomic factors are part of it if that's part of your search criteria. All of that's in there, but that shouldn't be the be all and end all. That should just be part of the thinking when you're trying to match companies.
Oh, absolutely. Because we want to make sure that you're finding the newest things, because it's like otherwise these small businesses really don't have a way to get through to the innovation market. I mean, they're spending a lot of money to go to these different prize challenges and things like that. And what you're doing is making it possible for them to, with some support and training, really talk to somebody at GovShop and say, I got this gadget, and you'll be able to say, here's some ways that this will go. And we've had an innovation thing with GovCon Summit before, where we kind of gathered together people in the innovation space to talk about how do you get there. And you've been in it so long. What is the difference that you're making?
Well, I hope that I'm cutting down on exactly what you said, which is there are tons of activities that a company can spend their money and time on. Tons and tons of activities, whether it's a pitch day or a hackathon or a big RFP. At the end of the day, you want to get an idea of what your probability of win is before you go after that. And through GovShop matching, what you can get a feel for, hey, do you know that based on the way this requirement is written, 1,100 companies were mapped to it, and you're like 1099 out of 11 in terms of strength? Okay, maybe you think about that one. It's really about finding which ones you're the best match for, and then down selecting and really investigating those, and understanding if that's a good customer for you and what your probability of win is based off of that. And so I think our biggest value prop on the supplier side is making sure we narrow the focus of what your capture efforts are. On the government side, it's find companies that aren't the same 10 companies that you've done business with for the last 20 years. There are thousands and thousands of companies that do the type of scope that you're looking for. By the way, data is dynamic. So today there's 1.9,854 on here. Tomorrow there's going to be more than that because companies create, they dissolve. And so the idea that we know who the companies are is always fictitious. Nobody knows who the companies are. It changes every day.
Well, I'm really glad that you're covering all this, Ben, because you're partnered with us for GovCon Summit that we're doing virtually in April. And we're working to identify companies that need to know about GovShop. The other day, I downloaded, I think, 350 companies that I felt fit the profile, but we've got to do this on a massive scale and have a system for it. And that's absolutely what you guys have created, is because this is a national security issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. The idea that we can have a consolidated industrial base and move fast is ridiculous. We must engage small business. It's funny. We must engage small business and new small businesses. We need new entrants into the defense market. If DoD isn't going to be the big research investor and we're relying on industry, then we need to engage those partners.
Well, you're right about that. And what I wanted to do is just let people know how to get in touch with us for to stay involved with it. And what we've got is coming up. We're talking about mastering the game of GovCon, and we've got coming up as we're putting together these Freedom Fridays. We're also putting together something called GovCon Summit, and Ben and his team are going to be part of that. So anybody that's interested can pass the word, and we'll be talking to people about signing up to find out how do you get involved with GovShop and others. And if you're on the list for Freedom Friday or you're watching us on LinkedIn, you're going to be hearing about it. So Ben, thank you so much for being on today and talking to us about innovation space and how you're basically reinventing it, you and Raj and a few other key dedicated people that are doing that. Any last words, Ben, and how do people reach you?
So first of all, how do you reach me? You can email me at ben@publicspendforum.net. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You will not reach me on Twitter. I'll waste my time on there, even though I have a Twitter. And you can go to publicspendforum.net or govshop.com. My final thoughts are this. GovShop is going to push the ball and we're going to open it up to a whole new group of companies, but we are one company, and obviously none of this is done by one company. There is more than enough work and problems to go around. We cannot get enough new companies into GovShop. We cannot put on display enough technologies. So I'd recommend everyone get in there, build a profile, let us know you build a profile, let us know what you're doing. Maybe we can do a spotlight. Maybe we can connect you to some customers.
Well, tell them real quickly what a spotlight is, if you would.
Sure. So we like to do spotlights specifically on different companies that are pushing the boundaries in the technology area or with a new product or service. And specifically push that out to our government networks where we know, hey, we know people are doing market research in this area, and let's do some spotlights. We don't hold equity in any companies. We're not an accelerator. We're just simply there to make sure that, companies with new technologies are getting known by DoD.